anybody who does not appreciate that climate change is a not only national emergency, but a global emergency really does not understand what's going on.
Senator Bernie Sanders introduced legislation this week alongside Representatives Blumenauer and Ocasio-Cortez declaring climate change a national emergency. With the resolution, it would not force any action on climate change. Advocates say it would emphasize the seriousness of the issue.
Meanwhile, the White House is moving in the opposite direction of progressive Democrats. A State Department analyst resigned after White House officials blocked his written testimony to a congressional panel, citing evidence that climate change poses a national security threat. One of the most influential activist groups in the climate change debate is the Sunrise Movement. They're a so-called army of young people who have united to stop climate change and promote job growth simultaneously. Lauren Maunus is a policy and political coordinator of the movement. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Lauren.
What did you make of this move by AOC, Sanders, Blumenauer to declare climate change an existential threat?
Yeah, we were extremely excited to see elected officials that have a big microphone right now and a lot of voice and power actually stepping up and treating this crisis like the emergency that it is. We really need that leadership at the level that they stand.
Mm-hmm.
And
but you said it didn't go far enough, right? The Sunrise Movement. Well, why do you think that their resolution doesn't go far enough?
Well, yeah, first off, I think that it's really important that this resolution can generate a lot of momentum and move the needle even farther among Democrats, especially in the House. There's right now not language about a Green New Deal in the resolution, although a lot of the core tenets of a Green New Deal are integrated and at the forefront of the resolution. Yeah, so I think it's a really good starting point, especially with
but we haven't solved the problem yet.
Yeah, especially
got
with
work to do.
Sanders incorporating it into a strong platform.
Got it.
But yeah, a lot of work still to do, but it's a good step in the direction of declaring this a national emergency and trying to generate more momentum around.
So AOC, at least in terms of popular conception, sort of put the Green New Deal on the map. I mean, we all remember very vividly when she protested outside of Speaker Pelosi's office, I think before she was even sworn in as a member of Congress. How important has she been to the Sunrise Movement?
She's been extremely important to our movement. Our movement's core theory of change is really aligning the people power that we need and the political power that we need. And so when she joined us in Representative Pelosi's office, just a few days after young people really worked so hard to elect this new group of champions into the House, she joined us in saying that Democrats' old way of saying that we need to evaluate the impacts of climate change and maybe come up with a plan is not going to cut it anymore, and that she's going to join with young people who are demanding that our elected officials
your
take
group
this
really
seriously.
got on my radar when Senator Dianne Feinstein, of course, had that viral clip talking to children who were part of the Sunrise Movement. What is it, how do you view the challenge of establishment Democrats? So like, how do you deal with the Nancy Pelosi's, the Dianne Feinsteins of the world, who many in their own right say they were climate activists in their time, were some of the most progressive people in Congress, but now they're not progressive enough?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they need to be elected, and so we know that young people comprise the majority of votes, and so especially in this upcoming election, we're working to mobilize young people to say that their old policies and often establishment approaches to climate, seeing it as we need incremental solutions, or that it can just be done in a certain way, are not going to cut it, and that this crisis is an emergency and we need to treat it like that. And I think we're seeing a shift in politics, and that young people came to Feinstein's office and she said, we don't need to listen to you because you don't vote yet. And I think, we need to really have the moral crisis come to their offices and have them confront what we're feeling as a generation, because ultimately we'll be the ones voting for them.
Sure.
Right. And what do you think of Pelosi in particular? I mean, she dismissed the Green New Deal as the green dream or whatever, and obviously is in a very public sort of spat with AOC right now, essentially over their very different philosophies of political change. You just spoke to your own philosophy of political change, which is very much in line with the sort of AOC vision. So what do you make of what Pelosi's doing here?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of momentum and know that in order to defeat Trump, we need a candidate who is going to actually address the concerns of everyday Americans, and that's talking about climate through also talking about jobs and healthcare and farming and housing issues. And I think when Pelosi continues to say that it's either a single issue or that this like wide, broad approach to addressing the climate crisis is out of line with the establishment way of doing things, and it's too ambitious, too urgent, that's not going to resonate with what people are feeling every single day as they're losing their jobs to climate. And so I think, it's really our work to show that the base, that she's out of touch with her voters, and that even the majority of presidential candidates and representing where the party stands right now are coming out with really ambitious plans that are in line with what a Green New Deal is calling.
Here's one thing I don't really understand with the Sunrise Movement and many others. If climate change is an existential threat, if all of this is at the level of danger that we are, even if the United States were to cut its emissions by 50%, China and India are going to continue polluting and doing what they want. So what is the global view of how this policy should change? I see a lot of discussion about the United States. Like I said, I mean, we could probably go to zero and we would probably still hit a 2C rise just because, I mean, 1/3 of the world's population is growing and using a lot of coal and a lot of natural resources. What is the policy view of that? And it's more the question of why obsess over the United States government and not instead think about how we can use U.S. policy to stop these countries from polluting the environment?
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. I think we need to be tackling U.S. emissions because we've historically been the largest emitter and continue to be, even while other countries are on the rise in terms of emissions. But we have the resources and we're set up to drastically reduce our emissions while also creating millions of good jobs and transforming our economy. And so if we're able to do that, and that would actually drastically help every other country who's facing the climate crisis, because it's a clearly global issue.
That's the thing about the Green New Deal, which is it this? I sometimes worry about this. Is it irresponsible to promise all of these beautiful new jobs and economic prosperity? Because in my view, the truth is, if you're going to cut, let's say we want to cut emissions. I've talked to a lot of climate scientists about this, about 50%. That is a huge hit to the United States economy. And that's just how it will be. A lot of us are going to have to stop our consumption of the everyday comforts of life. Now, that might be worth it if we're in an existential threat. But how do you view that in particular as a policy implication?
Yeah, I think it's not about talking about what we're going to lose, but actually what we can gain. We've seen skyrocketing economic inequality, racial injustice. People are hurting in all aspects of life, and so we can actually use the Green New Deal and tackling the climate crisis as an opportunity to transform our economy and society in ways that we really need and would help the vast majority of people.
What has the response been in not just red state America, but in places that rely on fossil fuel industries for their economic productivity right now? Because I think one of and you're speaking to this, one of the things that is different about the Green New Deal is that it puts front and center that economic transition. So we're not leaving West Virginia behind anymore, is at the core of what you're up to here. And it's not just about climate change, although that part is obviously incredibly important. It is about an economic transition, a fundamental economic transition overall. So what has the response been in places that you might expect to be skeptical?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen bipartisan support largely, especially initially when people hear about the Green New Deal. Still, not many people in some of these districts have heard about the Green New Deal. And as soon as Republican rhetoric and largely GOP media outlets touch those voters, then that's where kind of attitude and opinion starts to shift. But when we actually talk about what's written in the resolution of the Green New Deal and the framework of the vision that we're trying to achieve, it's common sense, and there's large consensus around this will help the majority of people, and it actually, like you said, puts at the forefront a just transition for workers and frontline communities.
Very interesting. Lauren, we're glad to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Lauren.
you again.
Next on Rising, Congress is voting to make the 9/11 Victims Fund permanent. It's about time, and that is a move championed by New York Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney.
He will tell us why he believes the measure is so important, and he talks about that and other big stories in the news when Rising continues.